we get LinkedIn's and numbers and email and all of that.
Definitely.
Whatever any of these connections go wrong. We are gonna keep it moving so that we can stay on schedule and respect your time and having good stuff.
Just FYI, make sure you sign in, find a sheet and restrooms are on either side of this kitchen area. So if you're looking for restrooms, there's one on that side, there's one on that side.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so there are drinks in the back. You can rise looking for anything like that. Right, our next speaker up is Jason Thomas. He's gonna be, oh, there we go. He is connecting. And Jason, your pronouns are?
He, him.
Jason's pronouns are he, him. Let's welcome Jason to the stage.
Oh, you good? Sorry about that. Do I need a microphone or can you all hear me without a mic? All right. Okay, I'll stick with the mic. It makes me extra nervous to have a mic, but that's all right. Appreciate it. Thanks. All right, my name is Jason Thomas. I'm a Denver native for the most part. I was born in Kansas, but and I'm not as technically savvy. I'm a project manager. I'm product manager for a fintech company. But in my free time, I do like to try to pretend like I know how to code. And so one of the things that I've been doing, I guess, in the last month or so is playing around with ChatGPT. Just by a show of hands, how many people have heard of either OpenAI or ChatGPT? Okay, so most people in the room. How many people have actually played around with ChatGPT? Okay, so might be talking to an audience that already knows a lot of this stuff, but I did want to just talk about generative AI. That's what GPT falls under, a specific type of AI called generative AI. And I want to talk about how it may change business. So conversational AI and chatbots, you think of like your Alexa or Siri, they've been around for a long time, but it's never really been a lot of hoopla around it. But back in November, OpenAI dropped ChatGPT. Within 5 days, it gained 1 million users. And just to give some perspective, it took Instagram 2 months to get 1 million users when it was on iOS. And it took Facebook 10 months to get 1 million users. So in 5 days, there were 1 million people had signed up for ChatGPT. It appears to be incredibly versatile. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with it. So in this talk, I just want to talk about what's behind ChatGPT, what makes it special, and what can and can't it do. So OpenAI is the company that created ChatGPT, and OpenAI has been around since 2015. Some of the initial investors into OpenAI were Elon Musk, who I'm sure most of you all have heard that name, as well as Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is the person who founded PayPal. And then there's a couple of other investors. But back in 2015, they invested $1 billion into OpenAI. In 2016, OpenAI released Universe, which is a platform measuring and training in AI's general intelligence. Then in 2020, OpenAI actually dropped ChatGPT, or excuse me, not ChatGPT, GPT-3, which is a uniquely effective large language model trained on trillions of words. Then in 2021, OpenAI dropped DALL-E. Somebody else was giving a presentation earlier about Lensa. I think that might have been the first presentation. DALL-E is a competitor or something that works similar to Lensa, where it creates artificial intelligence or images from artificial intelligence. And then in November, ChatGPT was dropped, November of last year. And then just earlier this week, Microsoft announced that they will be investing anywhere from $10 to $20 billion in using ChatGPT for Bing. So where are we at today? Like I said, Wednesday, Microsoft came out and said that they're going to make Bing faster with ChatGPT. And about right here is their stock price as of Wednesday. So about 248, and you can see shortly after that, it got as high as 265. So there's a lot of people that think ChatGPT or technology like it is going to change the world. BuzzFeed did something similar back in the January 27th. They announced that they were going to do some layoffs and start having their articles written by ChatGPT. And you can see that their stock also had quite a bit of a bump, 127% in one day. So their stock doubled in one day after this announcement. So when I've heard people ask, is it just a bunch of hype? Is it something that's going to be, next year we're not going to be talking about it? Maybe. But if the stock market and, investors are are able to gauge the hype, I think there's a lot behind it. So what is ChatGPT? GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And so it's a type of AI that they call large language models. I don't know what large language models is, so I asked ChatGPT to explain it to me like I was a 5-year-old. And so when I asked it to explain it to me as a 5-year-old, it said, imagine you want to make something new like a drawing or a toy, but you don't know how to do it from scratch. A good way to start is by looking at other drawings or toys that already exist and then using them as a guide to make something new and unique. That's kind of like how generative pre-trained transformers work. They're like a big brain that knows how to make all kinds of things, like pictures, stories, and even music. But instead of toys and drawings, they use words. So when they want to make something new, they look at lots and lots of examples of words and are put together to make sentences, like you would see in a book. Then they use what they learned to make new sentences that are similar, but still different and unique. And that's ChatGPT talking about itself. So how will businesses use AI like ChatGPT? Well, if you think of like a large corporation, there's a lot of data that is proprietary to that corporation, whether that is document. Well, I'll give you an example of where I work. I work at a fintech company, and so we have a lot of our conversations in Slack. A lot of how we've developed our products is either in Jira or Confluence. And I can tell you from personal experience, trying to get an answer to a question, like if one of my clients runs into a bug and I have to go and troubleshoot the bug, trying to research and find out how to resolve that bug can take me hours. But if an organization like mine was able to take all their data and their documents, their conversations, proprietary knowledge, and train something like ChatGPT, the thought is I would be able to come to something like that, put in what I'm looking for, the answer of what I'm looking for, similar to what I did when I asked what is, explain GPT like a 5-year-old, and I would be able to get the information from GPT. So in the future, the thought is a lot of businesses will use their information, put it into something, large language model, and then use that for their employees to extract data going forward. So rather than having to search for data or go search for a subject matter expert, you have an oracle, an AI that's acting as an oracle. Great, but what can ChatGPT actually do? So this is just some of the things that it can do. It can answer most questions about general human knowledge. It can tell stories and write letters. It can write and debug code. In fact, this screenshot is a screenshot of it writing some code in JavaScript. It can compose music, plays, fairy tales, and essays. You may have seen in the news, it can also help students cheat. So it can answer test questions, write school papers. It can also write poetry and song lyrics. Play games like tic-tac-toe or chess. It doesn't play chess very well. And then it can write in the style or tone of any known or fictional person. I think when I first started messing around with ChatGPT, I asked it to speak like Maya Angelou, and it would give me responses in the tone of Maya Angelou, which I thought was interesting to say the least. Notably, I think the biggest takeaway, well, one of the nicest things about ChatGPT is that it remembers the context of the conversation you're having. So like, if I was to text you, for example, we would have a running conversation and I could refer back to something else in our conversation. and you would be able to remember that and provide an answer based on something earlier in our conversation. ChatGPT does the same thing. It remembers context. What can it do for each of us? Pretty good, well, not pretty good, great presentations before me. One of the things that I was thinking about as Guy was giving this presentation about LinkedIn and having to talk to someone or communicate or contact somebody who's a complete stranger is, what do I say to that person? Well, something like ChatGPT could actually take the writing for you and write or take what needs to be written for you and actually write it itself. And then you can go ahead and send that to that person. So it can write job postings with detailed qualifications. It can create seeds for creative tasks. I've used it to actually improve my resume. I've used it for cover letters. You can see that when I asked it what is a generative pre-trained transformer, it can explain new complex topics in a special way. It can solve math. It can give advice. It can write also in multiple languages. It also codes. It can help you prepare for meetings and presentations like this presentation. I use ChatGPT to help me come up with the outline of this presentation. What are some of its limitations? So you have it right now, ChatGPT 3.5 has the knowledge isn't always accurate. So one of the things I say is, you can trust the knowledge, but verify that it's actually accurate, especially when it comes to coding. It can produce code that looks like it's right, but you want to verify that the code actually works. It doesn't have knowledge in some obscure fields. It's more of a general, it has general knowledge. The information that it provides is, up to 2021. So if you ask it anything about 2022 or 2023, it's not going to be able to provide you information. Also, I talked about how it, 1 million users within a short span of time, the speed has gone down. That's one thing I've noticed over the last few months, is that it's slower to sometimes to answer requests. A lot of times the servers are down. OpenAI has came out and said that they're going to be offering a subscription tier, and that'll take care of some of those problems. As well as when they release ChatGPT 4, the knowledge is supposed to be more trustworthy. So those are a couple of limitations for ChatGPT in its current state. There are some criticisms of ChatGPT, as you can imagine. If this AI if you're feeding it just tons of knowledge, it's going to weaken the value of a human being that is known as a knowledge worker. So if it ends up learning how to code, that's a threat to jobs. As I stated earlier, and as you may have seen in the news, that a lot of people not a lot of people, I don't want to, kids are using it to evade or plagiarize or cheat. It could be used to create divisive or polarizing speech at scale, although OpenAI has put a lot of restrictions around ChatGPT. So when you try to ask it, to create, I haven't tried this, but I've heard that if you ask it to create hateful speech, it won't do it. And then kind of going back to that first point, is that as this gets smarter and smarter, it is going to have an impact on employment. So what are some of the possibilities of ChatGPT going forward? I was actually talking right before this talk of having knowledge capital and it being inexpensive. Just throwing out a scenario. Let's say I wanted to start a blog and I want to create, 5 articles a day. Imagine how long it would take me to write 5 articles a day. If I use something like ChatGPT to help me create those articles and then read over them and edit them, it's cutting down on the amount of time that I would need to spend creating those. So now all of a sudden I have access to knowledge capital. I don't know how to code, but using something like ChatGPT, I've messed around and done a little bit of coding, just using ChatGPT to check the coding. It also increases the quality and depth of work. So going back to that writing example, one of the things I've heard writers say is it doesn't, at its current state, it won't replace writers, but it could come up with like a rough draft. And from there, if you're a writer, you can continue to edit it and refine that content. Of course, I think it kind of goes without saying that equates to significant productivity gains. Like I said before, reduced cost to knowledge capital, especially if you're an entrepreneur. The cost that it might take you to hire 10 programmers is going to be reduced if you could use something like ChatGPT to at least help with the initial draft of coding, and then have a few programmers who could review that and make sure that it's accurate. And these next two these are my ideas. I didn't read this anywhere, so it might not come true. Take this with a grain of salt. But imagine if you're Alexa, imagine combining Alexa with ChatGPT. And now you're asking Alexa questions about, I don't know, I'm depressed, what should I do? Or, you know, what's a good first date, right? Now all of a sudden Alexa's actually able to give you knowledgeable answers. And then this screenshot, this idea came after watching a few YouTube videos about the future and ChatGPT, and just, I'm talking about the advancements that are happening in AI, but on the flip side of that, there's a lot of advancements taking place with robotics. Boston Dynamics, this is their robot. I'm sure some people have seen the Elon Musk's robot. Imagine if you combine something that has the intelligence, ChatGPT, with the physical strength and dexterity of these robots, and you start to create androids. If this interests you, you know, I have some resources of how you can learn more. OpenAI's API is pretty easy to use, and they have some great documentation on how to use their API. So if you're looking to create some software that integrates with not so much ChatGPT, but OpenAI. ChatGPT is created by OpenAI. OpenAI has created DALL-E, which is the image generator. There's the OpenAI playground, where you can actually train OpenAI on specific knowledge. So you can actually feed it data into the language model so that you have output that's more specific. They also created Whisper, which you can actually talk. There's some programs out there where you can talk into your computer to ChatGPT and it will provide an answer back. So OpenAI as a whole, their website has a lot of great documentation and resources. More specific to ChatGPT, there's some great GitHub pages that provide some more information. Futurepedia.io has, it continually updates with the list of apps that are coming out within the AI space. So apps like Jasper is on there, ChatGPT is on there, Lenza is on Futurepedia, but there's, I want to say, hundreds of different apps that show up on Futurepedia. One of the things that is important in learning how to communicate with something like ChatGPT and get results back that you're looking for is what they call prompt engineering. And that's basically, what are you telling ChatGPT? What are you typing in before it provides a response back? And there's, I don't know if you want to really call it a science, but there's more of a technical aspect behind prompt engineering. If anybody's interested in a paper, I have a paper that it's about 50 pages that has different prompt examples. If you're interested in that, feel free to email me and I can provide a copy of that. How am I doing on time? What's it?
It's 1:14.
Okay. Do you all have any interest in looking at it? Looking at some examples?
Yeah.
Okay. See if I can get out of here. Oops. So like I said, I'm a project manager. That's what I do for my day-to-day. So don't judge me on this. But I was talking about the API, and I'm gonna pick this up. I was talking about the API and just creating different apps with the API. So I decided that I was going to go and create, using Retool, which is a low-code piece of software, decided to create rapdroid.com. So anybody can look that up. It doesn't work very great for mobile. The font's really small. But you go to this website and you type in that you want to write a rap about something. Let's say we want to write about Black Tech Denver. I'm going to go ahead and say write lyrics. And it's going to go ahead and do an API call. This is the album cover for Black Tech Denver. And then we have a rap says, it's time to show the world we got what it takes. Black Tech Denver making moves that'll shake the globe. We represent a tech scene that is bold and strong. So obviously it's not the greatest writer. Yeah. Either that or I just thought, I don't have a flow. But it's an API call that says, I think I told it to write lyrics in the style of Tupac, and it didn't do very well. Right, right. So this is my ChatGPT account. I like, as of, I think, like back on January 9th, they had a release that allowed you to save the history of your past conversations, and you can come back to these conversations. And like I said earlier, it remembers the context. So if I start a conversation with it today and I want to pick up on that conversation 2 months from now, it's going to remember the context of that conversation and continue the thread. One of the things for prompt, I was talking about prompt engineering. One of the things that I like to use a lot is act as. So if I want ChatGPT to take on a certain role, I'll tell it act as something. So in this particular, I said act as a business advisor. I have 10 years of project management experience where I implement SaaS products for large organizations. I want to create a startup that uses generative pre-trained transformer AI. Give me 5 business ideas that I could create given my career experience as a project manager. And then from there, it gives me 5 AI-powered project management solution, AI-driven business process automation, predictive maintenance and asset management, customer service AI, supply chain optimization. And then it goes into detail about each of those. So that's where I would start, something like that. But then if I come down to another conversation, let me see. There we go. What goes into a business plan? All right. So then it gives me, so let's say I want to take one of those ideas. Then I've asked in this conversation what goes into a business plan. It gives me the 7 pieces that go into a business plan. Once it does something like that, I'm going to say, in this example, I said I'm starting a career coaching business. Now write section 1, write that executive summary. And here's my executive summary. Now write section 2, my market analysis. Here's my market analysis. So on and so forth. Financial projection. Now, obviously, check but verify. All right. So it's been fed trillions of, well, think about how we learn, right? When you're 2 years old and you start speaking, how are you able to get the information that allows you to start speaking? It's by emulation. And in some ways, large language models do the same thing. We're feeding it trillions of words, and it's analyzing that data and learning how to speak as a result, which is kind of scary because if it's learning like that, it's going to learn like we do. And it's learning like we do a lot quicker than we do. And has a lot more breadth of knowledge than we do as well. But yeah, the information is not always accurate. Yeah.
I'm curious about like plagiarism or copywriting. So if everyone does that, right, then is it like a race to copyright? Like, let's say I had the same business model and I asked it the same thing, and then this is a great idea, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to trademark this. Is it a race to get that trademark? And then what? Does the ChatGPT, does it have the ability to say, this is very similar to Kellen's trademark in Denver. So we can't really say this, but maybe we could say, like, does it alter like that? It's kind of open-ended question, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
That's a great question. I don't know if I can speak to that specific use case, but that's a question that's come up for a lot of artists.
Yeah.
Is stuff like Dolly and Lenza. Well, Dolly and even the images, because it's taken art that already exists out there that has actually been created, and that's where it's learning, and then it's creating new art.
Yeah.
But it's really taken art that already exists. So there's a lot of ethical. I mean, even the first talk that we listened to, there's some huge ethical implications around AI. And who's feeding it the data, and based on whose standards is the data. Is this Western standards that are and ideas that are being fed into ChatGPT? So there's huge ethical concerns around stuff like ChatGPT. Yeah.
From what I found, it can provide, like, you ask the same question more than once, and we usually provide slightly different language every single time. But yeah, also to the point about the ethics, it's trained on the information that exists now, which is going to be heavily influenced by Western bias. Unless you're actually programming and having places where that's been corrected, it's just going to assume that it's going to be better.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, it's still growing, like with the interaction now with human beings, because it's like collecting more data and creating more information moving forward. And
So
people involved in creating public trust.
So I had a debate with ChatGPT. That shows you how much of a nerd I am. But I actually did have a debate along those lines, because I said, well, you have to sign up using your email and your phone number. So my thought is that it's learning everything about me. And based on what I put in there, it's starting to learn about me and provide me information based on learning me over the years. So back, I guess, to your question is yes, it does continue to learn. And I think that's part of the reason why OpenAI has it as free, because they think if millions of people are feeding data into it, it's only going to improve their product. But the fact that it's associated with my email account and my phone number, I do have concerns. And I got into an argument about how it does remember everything that I says, and tried to tell me that it wasn't going to try to influence my views, or it was going to feed me back data based on who I am as a person. So, but that was just what's that? Yeah.
So has there been discussion about the ownership of the work products? Because if I use ChatGPT to talk to me as my voice, and I'm toning and I'm doing this thing, and it's answering all my questions while I'm engineering this thing, do they have any ownership of what I just built? Or just that I create a work of art, or if you produce that rap song, do they have any ownership of what?
Great question. I guess first off, nobody's going to want to take ownership of that rap song. We don't have to worry about that. But there is and I don't know where it's at. I know as of last month, there was a lot of questions about if you could sell like the work that comes out of Dolly, right? Dolly's the image generator. Who actually owns that? Is that copyright? And what I had seen at the time is that it was not copyright and anybody could take it. But I don't know, I'm sure that discussion, they'll continue to have that discussion. So no, all great questions. All right. Cool. Yeah, if anybody has any questions or wants to know more, feel free to grab me after the talk, but that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jason. I think we all learned a lot. Please connect with Jason, please. For everybody you are talking to from here, please do find them on LinkedIn or your email or whatever you need to do, because we are trying to build a real authentic community. Cool. So up next we have Merlin Starr. Their pronouns are any pronouns.